Right after the May election's low voter turnout, I felt like doing a rant on voter apathy. But then I got an email from Jim Rafferty that made me think a little bit differently about it. So right now we're going to head over to Hardwoods Plus and have a sit down with Jim and hash it all out. So thanks for sitting down with me there, Jim.
Well, thank you for having me, Mike.
Yeah. I did have a few questions because you sent me a very interesting email about the turnout and the numbers and the campaign contributions that all kind of put a different light on it. Do you think that voter apathy is a problem?
I think voter apathy is a reality. Whether it's a problem or not, I don't know. But if we want to talk about that, I came up with what I think might be a doable plan. If you look at your precinct list, you see that Josephine County has 47 precincts. In those precincts, and I don't have it listed out here, but in those precincts are a certain amount of voters in each precinct. Using the sportsman theory, if you will, like the Ducks versus the Beavers and those kind of things, between precincts. And I would think that maybe Work for a Constitutional Government would spearhead something like this, and that is to have somewhat of like a competition between precincts. So, and have it in the newspaper, and maybe even to the point where the newspaper would list the voters that voted in each precinct. If you have the top precinct as, say, 21 is the top precinct, they'd be the top list, and you'd see the voters listed if the courier would have enough room on their paper to do that.
Well, competition will definitely bring people out, and it motivates people, because I have had weight loss competitions with friends of mine, and that really motivates me, and I beat them every single time. I know how to lose weight, it's just I also know how to gain it back again.
Okay. So you can repeat the scenario.
But yes, but this is an interesting idea, because you have to, if you're going to deal with the situation of voter apathy, you have to find something that motivates people.
Correct.
And
not really motivating them to vote a certain way. It's just motivating them to vote, period.
Yeah.
Not a certain way.
Right.
I have seen in other, the state here and other in the county where it says coming into the county, we support our veterans. Well, if you look at the precinct map, maybe each precinct could have their little sign out there saying, you are now entering precinct number 21. And it's a big deal.
Right.
Yes. Maybe the precincts could have parties of some sort. The precincts used to get together, the precinct people. And there were 7
when you're
men.
meeting at the polls, you have sort of a volunteer group.
They worked the polls. You had 7 males and 7 females who worked the polls. And I think the camaraderie developed with that, rather than being a political barrier, could bring people out to vote. Not necessarily to vote for a particular person or a particular issue.
But just to participate.
Just to participate, that's right.
Well, it's a good idea. I like the idea. It's too bad that people couldn't be motivated just by voting and making a difference. Yeah. There is a civic responsibility, but I find myself being somewhat apathetic about offices that we, for the most part, rarely encounter, like district judges.
Yeah.
And
hopefully, yes.
Yes, and a lot of these other, like, you never heard of that office until you opened the ballot and went, wow, what is this?
Yeah, what's the soil commissioner,
Yeah, that's right. So, right, something either needs to be done or not done. The thing is that in our county here, regardless of what we feel about the turnout numbers, it's actually worked pretty well over the past 15, 20 years that I've been around. When there are measures that people find the spending is superfluous, they vote against it. And they don't need more, they don't need a competition or anything like that, because there's something there that they care about, just as it was when they were dealing with 1784. They said, I can see that this is going to cost me X amount of money, and that I find that to be too much.
So that would be pretty much icing on the cake, in my opinion. You know, if you actually have a dog in the fight, if you will. I mean, I don't like that term too much either. But if you have something like that and it's personal, then yes, you're gonna go out and vote, and you may even try to talk other people into voting as well. But I'm kind of going beyond that, saying, okay, how about just voter turnout in general? And again, the three major parties that have primaries, you know, would be the Democratic Party, and the Independent Party, and the Republican Party. And if you look at those numbers, they have in the 40% turnout, which means 60% even of their own party decided not to vote, even for their own party members, maybe, you know?
Okay, so what about the argument that we don't really want people voting just to vote if they're not educated enough about things to care about voting? Why would we just generically want more voters?
It's my opinion, Mike, that if you registered to vote, you intended to vote. If you do not want to vote, you can unregister.
Well, yes, but the registered voter numbers for, let's say, you know, in this particular case, Josephine County, 63,076 voters, 24,453 voted. So 60% of those people stayed home, for the lack of a better term, of they just didn't vote.
So they're happy with what they've got.
They're happy with what they have.
Yeah. So they don't want to, they're happy with what they've got, so they're not going to vote. Now,
But what do you think that you would get if 100% of these 63,000 voted? You think you'd get the same result?
You could have. It's very interesting you mentioned that, because when I ran in 06 and I ran again this last election, once the initial tally comes out, it changes very little, even though only, we'll say, 30% of the precincts have reported, and you still have a number of precincts to go. It seems that the bottom line, the total tally, changes a percentage point or two, and you can see that with 1784. It came out in 8 o'clock, a little bit higher in the no, and then later on it came out a little bit less. But my point is, once it's counted, it seems that even though the county is so big, that O'Brien follows the same as Grants Pass.
If we are going to increase voter participation, something else has to be done other than what's being done now. Either going back to a voting in the polls sort of situation.
I go along with that.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't really know. I personally appreciate being able to send in my vote, but I would happily go back to voting at my precinct if I thought more people would participate.
Yeah. Well, the thing about precinct voting, again, in my opinion, the thing about precinct voting is you get together with the people in your precinct you have between 8 to 8 to do this. So you're not going to meet everybody in your precinct at that time, unless you're a PCP, then you're going to be meeting everybody. But when you're doing that, you talk about gardening, you can't talk anything about politics. And the positive side of that, in my opinion, is you sign up with a precinct person, they hand you a ballot, you fill it out, and you give it back to them. If there's any problem with that signature, or with the fact that you may not have voted in the last 5 elections and you're not eligible anymore, all that could be solved right there at the precinct. When I ran for clerk, that was one of my goals, was to do that. Not to bring precinct voting back, but to have the selection as an option to go to your precinct and sign in and be handed a ballot, or not handed, you bring your ballot in and you just drop it off there at the precinct. That's what I was thinking about doing.
That would have to be like a day of situation.
It would have to be the day.
It couldn't camp out there for weeks.
It would have to be the Tuesday,
Yeah.
the election day Tuesday,
Yeah.
for that to happen.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say about the money? Some of these candidates did very well with the amount of money that they spent for the votes that they got. And you have people who didn't even show up on the campaign trail, Trip Androy and
Mainly Myrick.
right, and Myrick. And
Myrick came in third.
yeah, which is an amazing thing.
And not a distant third either, a close third.
Right, and the clear winner in terms of money spent per vote was Darren Fowler, and you didn't see a sign for him anywhere,
Very few.
or very few anyway. What do you attribute that to? You think it's
Popularity. He's the mayor.
that many people really know who Darren Fowler
He's
is?
the mayor, and there's no such thing, I guess, as bad press, even though that he was totally in favor of the Merlin sidewalks, for instance. It didn't seem to hurt him. I really want to see the precinct turnout and how the precincts voted on the different commissioners and also measures.
Another thing that stood out glaringly amongst this is the yes on Measure 1784 people
Yes.
spent $7.53 and still lost by 8 points.
Yeah, they spent that much money per vote cast in their favor. They spent a total of almost $35,000, with 15 of that coming from All Care.
The no on 1784 people only spent 86 cents per vote, which is pretty good as
And
well.
that, again, that's not including the voter pamphlet argument. The voter pamphlet argument was $300. Work for a Constitutional Government did not put an argument in because we thought that the vote was going to be in November. So we were on the back burner with this issue until all of a sudden it was too late. Here's a misnomer, in my opinion. If Measure 1784 would have passed, it still would have affected those of us out in the county, because we purchase items in Grants Pass. And if Grants Pass businesses are being hit by a tax of this magnitude,
The prices have to go
the
up.
prices would be reflected probably, and we're out in the county would be subject to those prices, even though we didn't have a say-so in the vote.
Absolutely. In addition, we have a water plant, we have a wastewater treatment plant, and sewer plant, all of that stuff. I can't just eat that.
Right.
That has to be passed on to the consumer at some
It's
point.
amazing that those issues never came up very strongly during the campaign for or against, Measure 1784. Money buys elections. I mean, everybody knows that. I mean, the president spends $10 billion. Does it always buy an election? Well, look at Measure 1784.
Yeah, right.
I mean, no,
Exactly.
it's not a guarantee
That's right.
that money, even wisely spent or unwisely spent, is going to buy an election.
Oh, and that same thing is reflected in really most of the law enforcement levies that came our way in the past 10 years, probably.
Yes, that's true, and there was a lot of money spent on passage of those past levies.
Right. But motivation, voter motivation based on their own self-interest trumps everything.
Of course. Yeah. Like I was given the accolade by the Courier for having 100% voter turnout in 1998. Actually, since 1989, I have a perfect record of voting. Because I just feel it's a responsibility. It is an act of freedom, and
It's a civic duty.
it's a civic duty. Correct.
Yeah.
So, put all those three things together, and I vote.
Yeah.
I may not vote in, if there's a judge running unopposed, I don't vote for that particular position, but I do vote.
I don't think I have missed more than one election since my first vote, which was in 1982.
Wow.
So, yeah,
That's good.
and it's just, it's because it's your job to do it.
Right.
It's your job to do it, and you
It's
get
like taking the trash out.
That's right.
It's your job to do that,